Imagine a world where nothing truly disappears. Every street watched, every phone tracked, every moment recorded. Now imagine someone still vanishing without a trace. No goodbye, no evidence, no answers. In 2025, with all our technology, all our science, and all our confidence, some mysteries remain untouched. Files locked by power, crimes frozen in time, voices speaking from beyond death, and objects in the sky that refuse explanation. These are not stories from the distant past, they are happening now. And the most disturbing question isn't what we don't know, it's why we still don't know it. Stay with me, because once you step into these mysteries, you may never look at history or the present the same way again. We'll explain everything in this video, step by step. Don't skip it. History is often imagined as a straight road, events neatly arranged, causes leading cleanly to consequences. But the truth is less orderly. History is also a house of unanswered rooms, doors half open, lights left on, echoes without voices. And even in the age of satellites, supercomputers, and constant surveillance, even in 2025, some mysteries refuse to yield. They sit with us. They disturb us. They remind us that knowledge, however advanced, still has edges, and at those edges, humanity meets humility. Tonight, we step into those shadows, not to sensationalize, not to solve them, but to understand what they reveal about us. The vanishing of the modern world. In earlier centuries, people disappeared into forests, oceans, or wars. Their absence could be explained by distance or danger. But how does someone vanish in a world mapped to the centimeter? In 2025, unexplained disappearances remain one of the most unsettling mysteries of modern life. People step into ordinary days, commutes, phone calls, coffee runs, and never return. No credit card use, no digital footprint, no body, no farewell. What makes these cases unbearable is not just the loss, but the silence. Families wait between hope and grief, suspended in time. A mother keeps a bedroom unchanged. A phone remains charged. A birthday passes, then another. The mystery does not end. It lives on, inhabiting ordinary spaces. These disappearances force us to confront a painful truth. Technology has not conquered uncertainty. For all our data, we still cannot track the human heart once it decides or is forced to vanish. Second secrets buried by power. History teaches us that governments do not only record the past, sometimes they bury it. In 2025, classified files continue to haunt public memory. Documents promised, delayed, redacted, or released too late to matter. Intelligence operations that altered nations. Decisions made in quiet rooms that cost real lives. The mystery is not always what happened. It is why we are not allowed to know. Every sealed archive is a reminder that truth is often negotiated, rationed, and delayed. And the longer it is withheld, the more corrosive the silence becomes. Democracies depend on memory. When memory is incomplete, trust erodes. The unanswered questions do not fade. They ferment. History warns us gently but firmly. What is hidden today will eventually demand daylight. And when it does, the reckoning is rarely gentle. Third, the digital ghosts we leave behind. Never before has humanity recorded itself so obsessively. Messages, photos, voice notes, locations, our lives archived in real time. And yet, in 2025, the digital age has produced a new mystery, presence without person. Accounts that remain active after death. Messages sent from phones no one can find. Algorithms that continue to speak in a person's voice long after the person is gone. Grief, once private, is now algorithmic. Families scroll through timelines, encountering echoes. Birthdays auto-generated, memories resurfaced, faces smiling from years past. The question becomes hauntingly modern. When does a life truly end? When the heart stops or when the data does? These digital ghosts force us to ask whether memory is a blessing or a burden, whether forgetting once feared might sometimes be mercy. Fourth, the mysteries written into the sky. For as long as humans have looked upward, the sky has returned our questions with silence. In 2025, unexplained aerial phenomena remain officially acknowledged but not explained. Objects tracked, recorded, debated, not declared alien, not declared ordinary, just unknown. The real mystery is not what these phenomena are, but why they unsettle us so deeply. They remind us that Earth is not the center of anything except our own fears and hopes. They puncture the illusion that we are fully in control, that we have cataloged existence itself. Whether these sightings are advanced technology, misinterpretation, or something else entirely, they expose a deeper human truth. Certainty comforts us, mystery humbles us, and humility has never been humanity's strongest habit. Fifth, crimes without endings. There are crimes that close with verdicts and crimes that never close at all. In 2025, cold cases still linger across decades, names whispered by aging investigators, evidence boxes reopened with fragile hope, families who know every detail by heart because nothing else remains. What makes these mysteries so painful is not just injustice, it is incompleteness. Justice is a form of storytelling. It requires a beginning, a middle, and an end. When the ending never comes, society itself feels unresolved. These cases remind us that time does not heal everything. Sometimes it only deepens the ache. Sixth, the mystery of human choice. And then there is the oldest mystery of all. Why do people do what they do? In 2025, with neuroscience and psychology more advanced than ever, we still cannot fully explain cruelty, courage, sacrifice, or betrayal. We can map the brain, but not the moment a person decides to save a stranger or destroy a life. History is shaped less by systems than by choices, and choice remains profoundly mysterious. It is the space between impulse and action, between fear and hope, and no machine has yet explained it. Closing, why mysteries matter. Unsolved mysteries are not failures of history. They are its pulse. They remind us that certainty is temporary, that power is fallible, and that human experience cannot be fully contained by facts alone. They keep us listening, questioning, waiting. History is not only what we know, it is what we refuse to forget. And as long as questions remain unanswered, history remains alive, unfinished, breathing, and calling us not just to look back, but to look deeper. Because sometimes the mystery is not what happened. It is what it reveals about who we are. In an age when the world has been measured, mapped, and monitored, disappearance should be impossible. Satellites orbit above us, tracing the movement of storms and ships. Cameras watch over streets, stores, and highways. Phones record our steps, our conversations, our preferences, even our silences. We have built a civilization that remembers everything. And yet, people still vanish. They do not vanish dramatically. There are no thunderclaps, no cinematic last sightings. Most disappearances begin in the most ordinary moments of life. A person leaves for work and never arrives. Someone steps out to buy groceries and does not come back. A message goes unanswered. A phone keeps ringing in a pocket no one can find. The absence arrives quietly, and by the time it is noticed, the trail is already cold. What unsettles us is not just the loss, but the contradiction. We live under the comforting illusion that constant observation equals safety. That if every street has a camera and every phone has a signal, no one can simply fall out of the world. Disappearances expose that belief as fragile. They remind us that technology can record movement, but it cannot explain intention. It can show where someone was, but not why they chose or were forced to go where they went next. Families learn this lesson in the most painful way. At first, there is denial. A delay is assumed, a misunderstanding. Perhaps the phone battery died. Perhaps there was traffic. Time passes and concern sharpens into fear. Hours become days. Days stretch into a new kind of life, measured not by calendars, but by unanswered questions. Every sound outside the door carries hope. Every unknown number on a screen feels like a possibility. What follows is a long vigil. Parents, partners, children become archivists of memory. They replay conversations, searching for clues that were invisible at the time. Was there a pause in that last sentence? A change in tone, a worry unspoken? The mind circles endlessly, trying to solve what may have no solution. Grief in these cases is suspended. Without certainty, there can be no funeral, no final ritual, no permission to mourn fully. The modern world promises clarity, but disappearances deliver ambiguity. Surveillance footage often ends abruptly. A person steps into a blind spot. A camera malfunctions. A face is turned away at the wrong moment. GPS data stops updating, not with drama, but with a flat digital finality. Last seen, last recorded, last known. Language becomes cautious, almost apologetic, as if afraid to admit how little it truly knows. Authorities search, investigate, document, but even the most thorough systems depend on assumptions, that patterns repeat, that behavior follows logic, that evidence leads somewhere. When those assumptions fail, the case stalls. Files are labeled inactive, though nothing about them feels inactive to those left behind. The world moves forward, but the disappearance remains frozen in time. There is also the uncomfortable reality that some vanish not because they are taken, but because they choose to leave. Modern life can be isolating, overwhelming, and quietly brutal. The same technology that connects us can also weigh heavily, tracking every failure, every debt, every expectation. For some, disappearance feels like the last form of control, a way to step outside the story that no longer feels survivable. Yet even here, the mystery remains because intention cannot be proven and absence does not explain itself. Other cases suggest darker forces, crime that leaves no witnesses, no recoverable evidence, no resolution. The sophistication of modern systems has been matched by the sophistication of those who know how to evade them. The absence of proof becomes proof of absence, and justice finds itself stalled by its own standards. Without certainty, there can be no charges. Without charges, no closure. These disappearances force society to confront a quiet truth. Safety has always been partly an illusion. The difference now is that we believed we had outgrown uncertainty. We trusted that technology would close the gaps left by chance and cruelty. Instead, it has merely narrowed them, leaving just enough space for mystery to survive. What makes these cases linger in the public imagination is not curiosity, but recognition. We see ourselves in the routines that precede each disappearance. The same streets, the same schedules, the same small assumptions that tomorrow will arrive as expected. When someone vanishes, it disrupts that faith. It suggests that the boundary between presence and absence is thinner than we like to believe. Communities respond with vigils, posters, shared photographs. Faces become symbols, then memories. Over time, attention fades, but absence does not. It settles into homes like a permanent draft. A chair remains empty. A room remains untouched. Life reorganizes itself around a question that has no answer. In a world obsessed with data, disappearances remind us of what cannot be quantified. Love, fear, desperation, hope. These forces leave no digital trail, yet they shape decisions more powerfully than any algorithm. History, when it looks back on these moments, will not only see cases and statistics, it will see families waiting, systems straining, and a society slowly realizing that knowledge has limits. And in those limits, humanity still disappears quietly, inexplicably, and completely, leaving behind a world that can record everything except the moment a life slips beyond its reach. Power has always understood the value of silence. Long before secrets were stamped classified or stored on encrypted servers, rulers knew that controlling information meant controlling memory. In the modern world, this ancient instinct has not disappeared. It has simply been refined. In 2025, some of the most enduring mysteries are not buried in distant centuries, but sealed behind official language, legal frameworks, and carefully measured disclosures. Governments are expected to preserve history, yet they are also designed to protect themselves. Between these two responsibilities lies a tension that shapes the modern record of truth. Decisions made in private rooms during wars, intelligence operations, diplomatic negotiations often produce consequences that are immediate for some and invisible to others. When those consequences become uncomfortable, secrecy steps in, not always as an act of malice, but as an assertion of authority. What makes these secrets unsettling is not only what they hide, but what their existence implies. Every withheld document suggests a story that cannot yet be told. Every redacted page confirms that something has been judged too dangerous, too destabilizing, or too embarrassing for public view. The black ink becomes a kind of language of its own, speaking in absence rather than explanation. For citizens, this creates a fractured relationship with history. Official narratives offer coherence, while gaps invite suspicion. Trust depends on transparency, yet transparency is often delayed until those responsible are gone, or the consequences have faded into abstraction. By the time truths are released, the emotional urgency has passed, leaving behind a sense of manipulation rather than resolution. Intelligence agencies occupy a particularly shadowed space in this landscape. Their work, by design, resists daylight. Operations succeed when they remain unseen. But when secrecy extends beyond necessity, it reshapes history itself. Actions taken in the name of security can alter governments, economies, and lives, while leaving no immediate trace in public records. The mystery is not simply what happened, but how many lives were redirected without ever knowing why. Declassified files, when they finally emerge, often read like messages from another moral universe. Assumptions once considered reasonable now appear chilling. Calculations of acceptable loss reveal a distance between decision makers and those affected. These documents rarely provide closure. Instead, They raise new questions about accountability, consent, and the cost of power exercised without visibility. There are moments when secrecy is defended as protection of national security, of diplomatic stability, of public order, and sometimes that defense is valid. Not every truth can be revealed immediately without risk, but history shows that temporary secrecy has a way of becoming permanent. Deadlines for disclosure are extended, promises are revised. The exception becomes the norm. This gradual normalization of silence shapes collective memory. What is not acknowledged cannot be debated. What cannot be debated cannot be corrected. Over time, entire chapters of history exist only in fragments, reconstructed by journalists, historians, and whistleblowers working at the margins of official approval. Their work often feels less like research and more like archaeology, piecing together shards of evidence left behind by deliberate erasure. Those who challenge secrecy frequently pay a price. Leaks are framed as betrayals. Truth-tellers are labeled threats. The focus shifts from the content of the revelation to the act of revealing itself. This inversion protects institutions while sidelining the moral questions at the heart of the disclosure. The mystery deepens, not because information is absent, but because it is actively contested for the families of those affected by hidden decisions. Secrecy is not an abstract principle. It is a lived reality. They seek answers not out of curiosity, but out of grief. A son lost in an undeclared operation, a community destabilized by policies never publicly acknowledged. Without official recognition, loss becomes harder to name. Mourning remains incomplete. Secrecy also distorts accountability. Democracies depend on informed consent, yet consent cannot exist without information. When citizens are asked to trust without knowing, faith replaces understanding. Over time, this erodes the very legitimacy secrecy claims to protect. The mystery becomes cyclical. Power hides information to maintain stability, and the hiding itself generates instability. In 2025, technology has intensified this paradox. Information can be stored indefinitely, copied instantly, and revealed unexpectedly. Secrets are no longer fragile, they are fortified. Encryption replaces locked drawers. Digital archives outlast the people who created them. The question is no longer whether truth exists, but who controls the moment of its release. History reminds us that delayed truth still carries consequences. Revelations long postponed can reopen wounds thought healed. They challenge national myths, disrupt personal narratives, and force societies to reconsider their self-image. The past, when unacknowledged, does not remain passive. It presses forward, demanding recognition. The greatest mystery, then, is not contained in any single classified file. It lies in the enduring belief that power can outpace accountability indefinitely, that time itself can be managed, that memory can be controlled. Yet every era that attempted this eventually discovered that silence is not empty. It is crowded with questions, doubts, and unresolved human cost, waiting for the moment when the story can no longer be kept behind closed doors. The digital age promised immortality in fragments, not of the body, but of the self as it appeared to others. Messages saved without intention, photographs taken without ceremony, voices recorded casually, meant to be replayed once and forgotten. By 2025, these fragments have become something else entirely, a parallel afterlife, quietly persistent, endlessly accessible, and emotionally complex. For most of human history, memory was fragile. It lived in stories told aloud, in fading ink, in objects passed down and eventually lost. Forgetting was not a failure. It will as the natural rhythm of time. The digital world disrupted that rhythm. Now memory resists decay. It returns uninvited, summoned by algorithms that do not understand grief, nostalgia, or context. A notification appears, cheerful and automated, reminding someone of a smile that belongs to a person who is no longer alive. This persistence changes how loss is experienced. Death no longer creates immediate silence. Instead, it leaves behind a hum. Profiles still visible, conversations still readable, voices still playable. The departed continue to appear in feeds and archives, not as memories shaped by emotion, but as data preserved in its original tone. The past does not soften. It remains exact, unfiltered, and available on demand. Families and friends navigate this terrain without guidance. Some find comfort in returning to messages, hearing familiar phrases, tracing the cadence of a loved one's thoughts. Others find the experience unbearable, as if the digital presence interrupts the natural process of mourning. The question is not simply whether to keep these traces, but what they now represent. Are they memorials, or are they echoes that refuse to fade? Technology companies, often unintentionally, have become custodians of the dead. Policies determine whether accounts remain active, are frozen, or are deleted. These decisions, written in legal language, shape intimate human experiences. A platform may preserve a profile indefinitely, turning a life into a static exhibit. Another may erase it entirely, leaving loved ones feeling as though a second death has occurred. The mystery lies in how something so deeply personal came to be governed by terms of service. There are stranger cases still. Messages sent after death. Activity recorded from devices no one can locate. Automated systems that continue to generate content in a person's style, trained on their past behavior. To the grieving, these moments feel uncanny, as if the boundary between life and absence has been blurred by code. Rational explanations exist: scheduled posts, delayed syncing, artificial intelligence, but emotion resists rationality. What matters is not how it happens, but how it feels. These digital ghosts challenge the way history understands legacy. Traditionally, history selects. Most lives pass without record. Only a few are preserved in detail. The digital era democratized remembrance, ensuring that nearly everyone leaves behind a trail. Yet abundance creates its own problem. When everything is saved, meaning becomes harder to locate. The historian of the future will not struggle with scarcity, but with excess. Millions of voices speaking at once, none clearly prioritized. There is also the ethical question of consent. People record their lives without imagining an audience beyond the present. They do not write messages to be read decades later by strangers or to be analyzed by algorithms searching for patterns. Yet once stored, these fragments outlive intention. They become raw material for memory, commerce, and sometimes manipulation. The dead cannot revise their words, yet their words remain active. In 2025, artificial intelligence adds another layer to the mystery. Systems trained on personal data can now simulate voices, writing styles, even conversational habits. For some, this offers comfort, a chance to hear a familiar tone, to ask questions that were ever asked. For others, it feels like an intrusion, a counterfeit presence wearing the shape of someone loved. The line between remembrance and imitation becomes increasingly difficult to define. History has always grappled with how the past speaks to the present. What is new is the immediacy of that speech. Digital remnants do not wait for interpretation. They appear instantly, often without invitation. A birthday reminder surfaces for someone who can no longer age. A memory resurfaces from a time before illness, before loss. The past arrives whole, indifferent to the emotional state of the viewer. This constant return reshapes identity itself. People now live knowing they are being archived. Choices are made with future visibility in mind. Moments are curated not only for friends, but for an unknown audience that may include children, historians, or machines. Life becomes both lived and recorded simultaneously, blurring the boundary between experience and documentation. The mystery of digital ghosts is not technological. It is human. It asks whether remembrance should be permanent or selective, whether forgetting is a flaw or a mercy, whether identity should continue unchanged after death or be allowed to dissolve into interpretation. These questions have no precedent because no generation before has lived with such persistent reflection. As time passes, the digital presence of the dead will only grow. Servers will hold generations of unedited lives. Voices from different eras will coexist in the same space, equally accessible, equally immediate. History will not need to imagine the past. It will be able to hear it speak, and yet something essential will still be missing. Context, silence, the soft erosion that once allowed memory to become meaning. In preserving everything, the digital age risks flattening experience, turning life into a permanent present that never fully recedes. The ghost is not the data itself, but the way it lingers, asking the living to decide how much of the past they are willing to carry forward with them. For as long as human beings have lifted their eyes toward the sky, they have searched for signs that they are not alone in the vastness above them. Ancient civilizations traced meaning in stars, gods in constellations, omens in the movement of lights across the dark. The sky has always been a mirror for human longing and fear. In 2025, that mirror has become sharper, more detailed, and more unsettling, yet it still refuses to give clear answers. Modern technology was supposed to settle old questions. Radar would identify every object. Satellites would track every movement. Science would replace wonder with certainty. Instead, the opposite occurred. The more precisely we observe the sky, the more anomalies appear, objects that move without clear propulsion, shapes that do not behave like known aircraft. Encounters recorded by trained observers, corroborated by instruments, and yet resistant to explanation. What makes these phenomena significant is not their frequency, but their credibility. These are not myths passed down by rumor, but reports acknowledged by military institutions and scientific bodies. Carefully worded statements confirm observation without interpretation. The language is restrained, deliberate, and unresolved. The mystery is officially recognized, but not defined. This ambiguity unsettles modern confidence. Humanity has grown accustomed to mastery over its environment. We predict weather, map oceans, and decode the genome. The unexplained in the sky disrupts that narrative. It suggests that despite our tools, there are forces or phenomena operating beyond our current understanding. The discomfort lies less in the possibility of the unknown and more in the realization that knowledge has boundaries. Public reaction reflects this tension. Some dismiss these sightings as misidentified technology or natural phenomena. Others see in them the possibility of something profoundly transformative. Between skepticism and speculation lies a wide space filled with questions that remain unanswered. What is striking is how rarely fear dominates the conversation. Instead, there is curiosity, and beneath it, a quiet humility. History offers perspective. Every era has faced phenomena it could not explain. Comets once inspired terror. Eclipses were interpreted as divine warnings. Over time, mystery yielded to understanding. Yet each generation believed itself closer to final knowledge than the last. The unexplained phenomena of 2025 challenge that assumption, reminding humanity that progress does not eliminate mystery, it relocates it. The sky, once a symbol of divine order, now reflects technological uncertainty. Advanced aircraft, experimental drones, and classified systems complicate interpretation. Governments, constrained by security concerns, cannot always disclose what they know. This partial disclosure fuels speculation, eroding trust even as it seeks to protect it. The mystery becomes layered, not just about the phenomena themselves, but about the limits of transparency in a security-conscious world. There is also a deeper psychological dimension. The possibility that not all objects in the sky are of human origin touches something fundamental. It reframes humanity's place in the universe. For centuries, philosophical and religious traditions positioned humans at the center of creation. Scientific discoveries gradually displaced that certainty. Unexplained aerial phenomena continue that process, suggesting that Earth may not be as isolated as once believed. Yet the mystery does not demand belief. It demands patience. The most responsible voices in science and defense resist dramatic conclusions. They acknowledge what is observed, document what is known, and admit what remains uncertain. This restraint itself is historical. It marks a shift from denial to openness, from ridicule to investigation. The unknown is no longer dismissed, it is studied. These phenomena also reveal how humans respond to uncertainty. In the absence of answers, narratives emerge. Stories fill gaps. Some are hopeful, imagining contact and connection. Others are anxious, projecting threat. Both responses say more about human psychology than about the objects themselves. The sky becomes a canvas onto which collective fears and aspirations are projected. What remains consistent across cultures and eras is the emotional response to the unexplained: awe, unease, wonder. These feelings link modern observers to ancient sky watchers. Despite technological advancement, the human reaction to mystery remains remarkably unchanged. The tools evolve, the questions persist. The greatest challenge posed by these phenomena is not scientific, but philosophical. They ask whether certainty is necessary for meaning, whether humanity can accept not knowing without resorting to fear or fantasy. They invite a reconsideration of humility as a virtue rather than a weakness. In 2025, the unexplained in the skies stands as a reminder that the universe is larger than our frameworks. That observation does not always lead to understanding. That mystery, rather than being an enemy of knowledge, may be its companion. The sky continues to offer evidence without explanation, presence without clarity, movement without narrative. It remains open, vast, and indifferent to human desire for closure, holding its secrets at a distance that invites observation, speculation, and restraint, asking humanity not for answers, but for patience, discipline, and the willingness to live alongside uncertainty. Some crimes end with verdicts, Others end with confessions, evidence laid neatly on a table, a story finally arranged into something resembling order. But there are crimes that resist conclusion, crimes that refuse to settle into the past. By 2025, these cases still exist not as memories, but as open wounds, suspended between what is known and what may never be known. Cold cases do not fade quietly. They linger in file cabinets, in aging evidence rooms, in the minds of investigators who remember details no one else does. A photograph with a stare too steady, a timeline that almost makes sense, a witness statement that feels important but cannot be proven. Time passes, but the questions remain fixed, like coordinates that lead nowhere. For families, the passage of time brings no relief. Justice delayed is not justice softened. It is justice stretched thin, strained by anniversaries and unanswered calls. Parents grow old without knowing who took their child. Siblings build lives around a gap that never closes. The crime does not stay in the past. It moves forward with them, reshaping every milestone. What makes these cases especially painful is the illusion that time itself will solve them. Popular culture suggests that persistence is enough, that one day the missing piece will surface. Sometimes it does, but often time works against truth. Memories blur. Witnesses die. Physical evidence degrades. Streets are rebuilt. Neighborhoods change. The world moves on, indifferent to the fact that something essential was never resolved. Law enforcement carries its own burden. Detectives inherit cases decades old, bound by decisions made long before they arrived. Evidence collected under outdated standards. Interviews conducted without modern forensic awareness. Mistakes that cannot be undone. They read notes written by hands long gone, trying to reconstruct not just the crime, but the thinking of those who first pursued it. Advances in technology offer hope, but not certainty. DNA testing has reopened cases once considered hopeless. Genetic genealogy has identified suspects who believed they were safely anonymous. These breakthroughs feel miraculous, but they are uneven. For every case solved by science, many remain untouched, lacking usable evidence or clear leads. Technology illuminates some corners of darkness while leaving others unchanged. Cold cases also expose uncomfortable truths about whose lives were prioritized. Some investigations stalled not because of lack of evidence, but lack of urgency. Victims from marginalists, communities were overlooked, their cases quietly deprioritized. In 2025, these histories are being re-examined, but acknowledgement does not equal resolution. Recognition comes late, and justice, if it arrives at all, does so after generations have carried the cost. The mystery deepens when suspects are known but never charged. Legal standards require certainty, not suspicion. Prosecutors weigh the strength of evidence against the risk of acquittal. Sometimes the decision is to wait. Sometimes waiting becomes permanent. The public sees a name, a face, a narrative half-formed, and wonders why the story stops there. There are also crimes where no suspect ever emerges, no clear motive, no pattern. The randomness itself becomes terrifying. These cases challenge the belief that violence follows logic, that it can be predicted or prevented through understanding. Instead, they suggest chaos, an absence of meaning that resists explanation. Media attention plays a complicated role. Some cases become symbols, revisited endlessly, dissected in documentaries and podcasts. Others disappear from view, remembered only by those directly affected. Attention can bring resources, but it can also distort, turning human tragedy into spectacle. The line between awareness and exploitation is thin and often crossed without intention. For families, renewed attention can reopen grief. Each new lead raises hope, followed by disappointment. Closure becomes a moving target, promised but rarely delivered. The crime becomes a public story, while the loss remains private, carried quietly through ordinary days. Cold cases also shape collective memory. They become cautionary tales, warnings whispered across time. They influence how communities perceive safety, trust, and authority. An unsolved crime leaves a residue of fear, not just of violence, but of incompleteness. It suggests that the system designed to protect may not always succeed. In 2025, society is more willing to confront these failures. Apologies are issued, task forces are formed, files are reopened, but accountability remains complex. Those responsible for early mistakes may no longer be alive. Institutions acknowledge harm without clear paths to repair. Justice, when delayed long enough, loses its original shape. Yet the persistence of cold cases also reflects something enduring about human values: the refusal to forget, the insistence that every life mattered enough to deserve answers. Investigators who return to old files late at night, not because they are assigned to, but because they cannot let go. Families who continue to speak names aloud, refusing silence. These crimes exist at the intersection of memory and uncertainty. They resist neat conclusions, forcing society to live with unresolved narratives. They remind us that justice is not guaranteed by time alone, that truth does not surface simply because it is needed, and that some stories remain open not because they are forgotten, but because they are too important to close without certainty, leaving behind evidence boxes, unanswered questions, and a quiet understanding that history is not only written by what is solved, but by what remains unresolved, waiting for a moment, a voice, or a fragment that might finally shift the balance between knowing and not knowing. Video KY Start Kai Lay Hook BNA Kai Do Fully At. Thanks for watching this video, and Don T forget to like and subscribes.